it's Jennifer from Fiber Flux. Welcome back to week 4 of our 2017 spring crochet along. We are making the tropical getaway blanket. This is a beautiful granny square blanket, and each one of our grannies has a little blossom in the center, making this a great blanket for spring. We are making this in the Red Heart with Love yarn, and so many of you have been sharing your squares with me, and I just love the colors that all of you have been picking out. So keep sharing those photos. We love seeing them, the whole community. So we've learned so far how to make this basic granny square, stitch by stitch, round by round. And then last week we learned how to join all of these squares together. So as I mentioned before, my blanket is 24 squares. However, I gave some different options if you needed a different sized blanket, both larger than this one and smaller than this one. So this week we are going to be kind of wrapping up the blanket and doing an edging. So far I have let me just slide this over so you can see it. This is the edge of our blanket. So we just have squares that have simply just been joined on. So we're going to add a border along the edge of our blanket and just kind of frame it in. This part is very flexible, so you can do just one little simple edging around, or you can pick your favorite color from the blanket and do a couple rounds. I'm going to show you how to do one round and how to do subsequent rounds so you can add as many as you like. I'm going to do a couple rounds of each one of these colors just to kind of tie it all together. And then once we're done making, we're going to make a simple granny border to kind of mimic what's happening within each one of these squares. So once we're done learning how to make the simple granny border, I'm going to show you also how to just add a very simple, easy scallop to the edge as well. Again, all of these are optional. You can leave your blanket as is. You can just put 1 round, you can put 20 rounds. This is a really good opportunity to use up some of the yarn that you may have left over from making your squares. With that in mind, though, I'm going to be sharing next week a special surprise bonus pattern. It's not a huge pattern, it's something small that will kind of go along with your blanket. So if you still have leftover yarn, that's a great opportunity to use some of that yarn as well. So what we're going to do first is I grabbed the white yarn. I'm going to put a round of white around this. When you join squares, sometimes when the squares come together, you can get little dips and little irregularities. So putting this round on here in white is just going to kind of clean everything up along the edges. Then I'm going to do a couple of rounds of each color. So I'm going to do aqua next. I'm going to do 2 rounds of aqua, then 2 rounds of blue Hawaii, 2 rounds of lilac, then 1 round of the papaya, of the granny, and then I'm going to do another final round of the papaya with the scallop. So it's really going to be 2 rounds of each color when all is said and done. The reason I'm doing the white is it'll blend in with the white I have here to kind of clean up the edges a little bit. So let's get started. I'm going to show you how to do round 1 first of our border. We're going to begin our border in any of the corners of the blanket. So I'm going to just start in the top left. You can start in any of the 4 corners of your blanket that you like. So what we're going to do is, I've got my white yarn here. Now if you did a different color to do the join as you go, you can use that color as well. So what we're going to do is simply just tie the yarn into this corner. And we're basically going to be working this blanket as if it were a very large granny square. So we're just going to be going all around the edges, working it like a granny square. There is one variation of round 1 that I wanted to point out, and then each round after that will be much easier. But there is a little slight difference of round 1 that I wanted to point out. Again, anytime you have the opportunity to weave your ends in as you go along, please do that. It'll save you lots of work. We're going to talk a little bit later in the video about weaving in the ends. You're going to have 2 different types of ends that you'll encounter. Okay, so we're going to hold the tail along the edge as we work. Reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and chain 3. You're going to see that this is very, very similar to what we've been doing all along. Okay, so chain 3, then work 2 double crochet into that corner space, just like that. Then work a chain 1, and then 3 more double crochet all in that corner space. So 1, 2 and 3. Then chain 1. Then we're going to hop to the first space, and we're just going to be working it all along the edge here, just like we would a regular granny square. So work 3 double crochet. I'm still holding that tail along the edge as I work. So work your 3 double crochet, then chain 1, holding that tail. We're just going to go all the way down the side of this first granny square. 3 double crochet, chain 1. We're just going to continue down the whole side of this first granny square here. So just work 3 double crochet, chain 1 in each one of these chain 1 spaces from your granny square. Still holding that tail along the edges we work until it gets too short. And we'll be trimming and snipping all of these tails later. And some of them we'll still have to weave in. Okay, so now here's our tail. Just give it a little tug and then kind of push it out of the way. All right, I'm going to shift my blanket a little bit. This blanket has grown quite large, so I'm trying to fit everything in here. Okay, so let's just work down the side. 3 double crochet, chain 1. So that's 3 double crochet. And then chain 1. 3 double crochet, and then a chain 1, 3 double crochet. Now I'm showing you all this because this probably looks very, very similar and very easy because we've done so much granny square type of things for this project. But I just wanted to show you, as we're approaching the end of this corner, you will most likely run into a tail, which you can also weave in as you go. Alright, so we've come to the end of our square. See how it looks right now? Alright, we're at the end of our square. This is where we joined. So you have a corner here, and you have a corner here. So instead of working into this corner space, or this corner space, once again, when we did the join as you go, that would make it off center. So what we want to do is work into the space in between the squares for just this particular round. After that, everything's going to kind of even out and sort of correct itself. So you can hold that tail along the edges you work and work into that space in between the squares. Not the corner spaces, but the space in between the squares. Okay? So we just did our 3 double crochet, chain 1. And then work 3 double crochet, chain 1 into that space in between the squares. So 1, 2, and 3, and chain 1. Now you may find that you'll have a slight, very slight dip where you do this. You can kind of pull it up to straighten it out, but because we're kind of going down a little bit lower than we did back here, you might experience a little dip. Now as you add more rounds of your border, that'll all just kind of even out. Alright, so let's come over here to that next space. So we've dealt with the corners here, and then the next chain 1 space that happens right after that corner. Okay, so work your 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. We're just doing the same thing all the way down. And then when you get to the next spot where the squares have been joined, you're just going to do the same thing and work in the spaces there, okay? So I'm going to continue and work my border all the way around. And then you'll also want to deal with the corners the same way. So each corner is 3 double crochet, chain 1, 3 double crochet. So I'm going to continue with the white all the way around my blanket. And then once we get towards the end, we're going to rejoin, and I'm going to show you how to work the next round. It's very similar, but we're not going to have to deal with this area here where the corners join, okay? So go ahead and work on the round all the way around, and when we get towards the end of it, we will rejoin and begin the next round of our border. Okay, so I'm just working those last few stitches of round 1 of our edging. And then what we're going to do is join with a slip stitch to close, the same way we did for all of these other granny squares. So just count that 3rd chain up and join with a slip stitch to close the round. So round 1 is complete. Now, like I mentioned before, you could kind of leave it at that and have your blanket be finished. But I want to put a nice multicolor granny border on mine, additional granny rounds. So we added, each of our granny squares already had white around each one. So we added an additional round of white. So visually, when you look at the blanket, it looks like, you know, 2 full rounds around the entire blanket. So what I'm going to do is, I think I mentioned this before, I'm going to do 2 rounds of aqua, 2 rounds of blue Hawaii, 2 rounds of lilac, and I'm kind of putting them in more of a gradient order. For the rest of the granny squares, these colors were kind of mixed up. But that all being said, please feel free to do your border however you like. You can just put a couple rounds on there, whatever you feel like doing. And just note too that the more rounds you put on and the thicker you make your border, it will increase the size of your blanket as well. Okay, so round 2 of our border is actually a little easier than the round we just did. So what we're going to do is just tie the new color right onto any of the corners. It doesn't matter which one. And again, for these border rounds, make sure you're weaving your ends in as you go along too. Anytime you can do that for these types of projects, you'll save yourself that much more time at the end. Okay, so we're just going to start the round just as we normally would. This is now essentially just a really big granny square that we're working around, okay? So insert your hook back into that corner space and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now work 2 double crochet. It's just the same way we've been doing the corners all along. Chain 1 and 3 double crochet to start off the round. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, just like that. Then we're just going to work our granny square blanket the same way we've been going. Now, when we get to the area, remember where we had to work in between the corners here? It's not going to be an issue in this round because you're just going to simply work into those chain 1 spaces as if it were a regular granny square. Okay, so you're just going to continue across, work your chain 1, 3 double crochet, all the way across in each one of these chain 1 spaces. Just like that. Now again, you can do this in any color you like. I'm going to kind of start, because I started with the white, I'm going to work up to the darker blue and into the purple and then finish off with the papaya. So it has more of a gradient look on the edge to kind of frame it all in and tie all those colors together. So I'm going to keep working across. And when we get to this first corner, I'll just show you the corner one more time as a refresher, just to do that first corner. And then we'll be able to continue with the border, and you can make yours for as many rounds as you like. Okay, I've been working round 2 all the way around, and I gotta say, it's really looking nice. It's really framing it in nicely with the color, and I'll be adding more color, so it'll even add a thicker border. But we're at the first corner from where we began. So if you followed us along for the entire crochet along, you've probably seen me work lots of corners by now. But just in case you need a refresher or didn't see this part, when you get to the corner, after you've worked all down the side, working 3 double crochet, chain 1 in all of the side spaces here, when you get to that first corner, and we've also come to a tail, so we'll hold that tail along the edge too as we work. But just to work the corners as a refresher, just work 3 double crochet. That's 1, 2, and 3, chain 1, and then 3 double crochet, all in that same corner space. Just get a little bit more yarn there. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so that's just how that corner's worked. Then we're just going to continue down the side, work the next corner, down the other side, and then back up. So once we get towards the end of this round, what we're going to do is finish it off and then just repeat this round over and over and over again until your border is as wide as you'd like it to be. Once again, if you're happy with this and you just want a small border or you're running out of yarn, etc., you can just keep it as is. But if you want to continue to add more and use up your yarn or whatever you have on hand, just repeat round 2 as often or as okay, so just keep going all the way around with this granny square stitch, and then when you're finished, just repeat round 2 over and over and over until your border is as thick as you would like it to be. I'm going to add some more colors to mine, but you can leave this as is if you're running out of yarn, or if you just want one simple little color along the edge. That looks very pretty as well. So just continue as with round 2 as long and as far as you would like your border to come out. And then when we rejoin, we're going to finish up the simple granny border, and I'm going to show you how to do a very easy little scallop along the edge if you'd like to do that as well. All of these border steps are optional, so definitely pick and choose what you like best. So when we rejoin, we'll finish up this granny border and I'll show you how to do a scallop. Okay, so I'm just working the last few stitches of the border, the more basic part of the border. Just those last 3 double crochets, and then we're going to join with a slip stitch to close the round. Now, one thing I forgot to point out is now as you can see, the border is complete, and I did, well, each square was edged with the white when we did the join as you go. So I added another round of white, and then I did 2 rounds of aqua, 2 rounds of blue Hawaii, 2 rounds of the lilac, and then I just did 1 round of the papaya because our scallop will also be in the papaya. But one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that when you want to stick with the same color, so when we made our squares, we did 1 round and then we switched colors, 1 round, switch colors. But for the border, we did 2 rounds of 1 color. So when you're doing a granny square and you want to stick with the same color, what you need to do is slip stitch over to the corner space, because you won't be at the corner space when you close the round. So just work a slip stitch in between each of the posts until you get to the corner space, then work a slip stitch also in the corner space, and then you're ready to do your chain 3. Okay? Let me just pull that apart. All right, so we just joined to close our round. So let me just show you that one more time. I'm going to begin the scallop edge in the papaya also. So I'm going to stick with the same color, and you can do the scallop if you like, or you can keep the border plain. If you like the way it looks like this, maybe you want to add another color or another round of papaya in just this granny square border. It's totally up to you. Now I did kind of a rainbowy gradient look to mine. You can mix up the colors like you did for the squares. It's totally up to you. So what we're going to do, like I said before, is just slip stitch over to where you need to go. So we're just going to work in between each one of these posts. We're just going to work a slip stitch until we get to that corner space. Okay? Now, to do the scallop, if you want to do the scallop on yours, and I think it just adds a nice little finishing touch, what we're going to do is chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now in the same corner space, we're going to work 11 double crochets. That'll give us our corner scallop. Now this counts as one of the double crochets, so it's actually going to be 12 if you count this one. Okay, so work 11 double crochets into that corner space. So 1, 2, 3, and you know what? I need to grab a little bit more yarn off my yarn ball here. Just grab a bunch of it. Okay, so that was 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Okay, so just kind of double check them, make sure. So we have our chain 3, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, So this is our first scallop. It's on the corner here. Then what we're going to do is in the next space, this next chain one space, work a slip stitch. So insert the hook into the space, bring up a loop, and then just bring that loop through the loop already on your hook. That's going to create the valley part of our scallop, okay? Then in the next chain one space, we're going to work 6 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so we have 2 scallops so far. Now do the same thing we did and work a slip stitch into the next space. And then in the space after that, we're going to work 6 double crochet. So we're going to repeat this all the way down the side of our blanket. Do 6 double crochet, then a slip stitch. 6 double crochet, then a slip stitch, okay? Okay, so work in the next space, 6 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, okay? So we have a couple scallops happening. Then in the next space, work a slip stitch. Just going to do this all the way across. Let me get a little bit more blanket here. Next space, 6 double crochet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, so let's continue that all the way down, and then we're going to meet up when we get to this next corner, and I'll show you how to do the corner. So just keep working your slip stitch, then 6 double crochet, slip stitch, 6 double crochet. If we look at what we have so far, it looks very pretty. It adds a nice pretty little edge. Okay, so I've worked this scallop all the way across, and now I'm arriving closely to that first corner. Okay, so I just worked a scallop, and then I have one more space left, so I'm going to go ahead and work a slip stitch. And now in this corner space here, we're going to work 12 double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So as you can see, putting all those stitches in that corner space allows it to come up, over, and around and round off that corner. So to continue with this round for the rest of your blanket, what we're going to do is in that first space, do a slip stitch. And then we're just going to go down the next side and then work the corner, the next corner the same way. And so you're just going to be repeating this sequence all the way around. So I'm going to go ahead and continue with our scallop border. And then once we get towards the end, I'm going to show you how to finish everything off. And then we're going to talk about weaving in some ends on your blanket as well. Okay, I went all the way around, and now I'm just back to where we started here. So I have one more space. I'm going to go ahead and work my slip stitch because I just, as you can see, did a scallop back here. So work that last slip stitch, and then we need to join. So let's grab our yarn here, and at the top of that chain, remember that chain 3 we did at the beginning of the round? At the top of that chain, go ahead and join with a slip stitch to close the round. And what that will do is not only close the round, but see as I join with a slip stitch, see how it pulls that scallop back down in place where it needs to go, so it looks similar to the other side. Then what we can do is cut the yarn and fasten off, and the crochet part of our blanket is complete. Let me just I can't get the entire blanket in the frame. You'll have to wait for the big reveal for that, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. But let's lay our blanket out, and you can see the scallop just looks so pretty. It adds a nice little extra to the edge there. And our blanket is complete. So the next thing we need to do is, let's flip this guy over because we have lots of ends. Now, if you wove your ends along, wove your ends as you went along, like I did, you will have just lots of things to trim. Okay, now see how this guy here, this has been incorporated under these stitches here. You can just go ahead and trim. And just look for all of the areas where you wove the ends in as you went along, just like that. So go through your blanket, look for any ends that you may need to trim. Obviously, I have a lot to do, but some ends, like this one, this was where we fastened off. So this end couldn't have been woven in anywhere. So what we need to do is grab a tapestry needle, and if you need to do a fresh cut, that's okay too. And give it a nice twist and send it through the eye of the needle. Make sure your needle is on the larger side so you can get the yarn through the eye of the needle. And then flip it over to the back. Now when you have lots of colors like this blanket, you'll want to keep the end color along the same color. So this is papaya. We're going to just stay in the papaya area when we're weaving those ends in. And the same thing goes for all the other colors as well. So go ahead and send your tapestry needle in one direction all along those stitches in one direction, and then come back in the other direction, and that will help lock things into place, especially these ones that are on the ends like this. Now when you have lots and lots and lots of ends, like these multicolor blankets, you're going to have once in a while, especially when you launder it and things kind of are moving around and agitating, you might get some ends that pop out later. You can just go ahead and trim those ends. In an emergency, if it's very, very short end, you could kind of strengthen up that knot and tighten it up and just cut it flush if need be. But otherwise, you're just going to go through and trim off everything you need to trim off until the blanket has no ends remaining. So I'm going to go ahead and do my ends on my own, but I just want to flip this back over because once you get all the ends woven in, your blanket will be complete. And it looks beautiful, and I can't wait to see all of yours. Some of you have been sharing with me your colors that you've chosen, so it's really been fun to see all the beautiful colors. So go ahead, hop on Ravelry to our Ravelry group, and I'll share that link below so you can join our group if you haven't yet already. Share your stuff, and tomorrow on the Fiber Flux blog, I'm going to be sharing the big reveal. I'm going to photograph the entire blanket so you can see the whole thing all at once instead of just part of it in my frame here. So hop on the Fiber Flux blog tomorrow for the big reveal and join the Ravelry group and catch up with all of us on social media. Share your photos, and next week what we're going to be doing is there's going to be a surprise pattern that will go along with your blanket. If you can guess what it is, leave it in the comments below and see if you can guess what it is. And if you have some yarn, this is a great project next week for the leftovers. See, I have some papaya left, and I have some of the other colors left as well. So this will be a great way to use up some of those scrap pieces of yarn and the rest of the balls of yarn that you may have. And then the following week, we're going to be doing the Maker Gallery. So if you're working on your squares, if you have beautiful piles of squares sitting around, share those photos with us, and anything you want to go into the Maker Gallery, please send my way, and I will definitely be sure to include that in the Maker Gallery. So that is it. That is the week 4, the border. I hope that you learned how to do the border that you like best, whatever thickness you chose, whether you did the scallop or not. Also, leave in the comments below what border you're choosing to do. Are you going to do the full border like I did? Are you just going to do a few rounds? Are you going to bring the scallop in closer and do it up against the edge? So share with us what you'll be doing, or if you have any ideas, if you like to go in a different direction and do a different border. So that's it. That is week 4. Stay tuned and join us next week on Tuesday for week 5, where we'll be sharing the surprise bonus pattern. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click that subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again.